How good will the Miami Hurricanes be this upcoming college football season? We got to talk about it. I want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of this video, Manscaped. So Manscaped recently just launched their Lawnmower 4.0. And listen, if you are a guy who does a lot of shaving underneath, the Lawnmower 4.0 is the perfect tool for you because listen, my first time shaving a couple of months ago went terrible. I had a bunch of scrapes, I had a bunch of bruises, and I also had patches because I didn't finish the job. So when Manscaped sent me the Lawnmower 4.0, I used it, and I was a little bit scared, okay? Because I was like, I ain't trying to give myself patches and give myself injuries like I did last time, my first time shaving. But when I used the Lawnmower 4.0, let me tell you guys something. It was a easy process. I had no scrapes, no bruises. It was no pain. Listen, if you're a guy who does a lot of shaving underneath, make sure that you guys go ahead and cop the Lawnmower 4.0 using my promo code JT for 20% off plus free shipping off your Manscaped purchase. Once again, make sure that you guys use promo code JT for 20% off your purchase plus free shipping. Your balls will thank you. Alright, so this is my first fully dedicated Miami Hurricanes video that I've made in a very long time. Now, for a lot of you guys who are new to the channel, I started out this channel a couple of years ago talking a lot about Miami Hurricanes football. And then I started to branch out, talking more about the NFL. And I kind of started talking less about the Miami Hurricanes over the years. But one of my biggest goals this year is to talk more about college football in general, because most of the time I only talk about college football when college football season rolls around and I preview the games and give my predictions. But I want to talk more about the college football in the off season because I kind of want to branch out back into college football. I want to talk about the NFL and I want to talk about college football as well because I love college football and I'm a diehard Miami Hurricane fan. Now, being a Miami Hurricanes fan for pretty much my whole entire lifetime, I haven't been this excited about watching the Miami Hurricanes play this season since ever. Like, I'm so excited to watch this team play. Now, a large reason why I'm normally not really all that excited to see the Miami Hurricanes play is because oftentimes I have pretty low expectations when it comes to Miami Hurricanes, and oftentimes I'm often left disappointed. Like, the last time I had high expectations for the Miami Hurricanes, it was coming off that big season that Mark Richt had when Miami was close to making it to the college football playoffs, but then they ended up getting upsetted by Pitt. Then they lost in the Orange Bowl to Wisconsin. Then I remember going to my school, talking a lot of crap to Florida Gators fans because I got a lot of homeboys who happen to be Gators fans. So you guys already know the Miami Hurricanes and Florida Gators rivalry. So I was talking a bunch of crap about how Miami was going to win the national championship and things like that, just for Miami to poop the bed, let me down, and then lose to Wisconsin in the bowl game again. So then Mark Richt steps down as a head coach for the Miami Hurricanes, and Manny Diaz steps up. Now, Manny Diaz talked a lot of good stuff, before he even coached his first official game as a head coach in Miami. He was talking about the new Miami. He had that viral clip that went around and said, you can come to Miami and win games, or you can go somewhere else and get your A kicked every time you play Miami. And so far, it looks like, Miami has really lived up to, the way Manny Diaz was talking, because it looks like every time Miami plays a good team, Miami's the one getting their A kicked instead. So, first year for Manny Diaz, I didn't really have high expectations, and somehow, despite me having low expectations, I still got disappointed because Miami lost to Louisiana Tech in the bowl game, okay? So last year, I still didn't really have all that high expectations for Manny Diaz. Like, I wanted to see some growth. I wanted to see some improvement, and that's what I saw. Miami won 8 games last year. Now, a lot of Miami Hurricanes fans may not have been impressed with how last season went, but I was content with how last season went because Miami beat the teams they were supposed to beat, because the year prior, Miami was losing to teams that had no business losing to, like losing to Pitt, losing to Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech is on the up and up now, but back then, that was a team that was just going from the triple option and things like that. Like, they were making the transition, so there was no reason why Georgia Tech should have beaten Miami a couple years back. But anyway, Miami this year has a lot of talent. This is the most talented that I've seen this Miami Hurricanes football team since I've been alive. And you guys got to remember, I was born in 2002. So by the time I came out the womb, Miami was one of the best teams in college football. Now, this year, I'm expecting this Miami Hurricanes team to win at least 10 games. I feel like 10 games is a reasonable expectation for the Miami Hurricanes that should be able to be met, because Manny Diaz is going into his third year with this Hurricanes program. Okay, I'll get his first 2 years was all about building the culture, you know, establishing our identity with this Hurricanes program. Okay, I understand that. Year 3 is time to take that big step. And when you look at the previous Miami Hurricane coaches, Mark Richt, Al Golding, even the guys that came before my time, they all had big leaps their third year at Miami as the head coach. So for Manny Diaz, I'm looking for him to make a big jump his third year with Miami. Now, like I said, Miami has been a team that I haven't really had a lot of high expectations for. I have high expectations this year because this is a really talented squad. And I know a lot of Miami Hurricane fans get criticized every year by all of college football for, you know, always overrating Miami. But I don't feel like I'm overrating Miami this year. I really legitimately feel like this is a team that should realistically win 10 games. I know there's a lot of Miami Hurricane fans out there that go on Twitter year in and year out and say, oh, it's, you know, ACC championship or bust, man. So this year, those Miami Hurricanes fans really have legitimate reason to believe that, and they have a legitimate reason to, you know, say that, because this is the second most talented team in the ACC. Okay, you look at offensive coordinator Rhett Lashlee coming back. If Rhett Lashlee's offense is as good as what it was last year, or even better, which it should be, then Rhett Lashlee probably would be coaching his last year in Miami, because he most likely probably will become a head coach somewhere else in 2022. Then you have Manny Diaz taking over as the play caller on the defense side of football, which thank God, because now we got rid of Blake Baker. And I kind of went in the bat for Blake Baker. I was saying, okay, you got to give Blake Baker a little bit more time. You know, the defense isn't awful. He's now the linebackers coach at LSU, so he's LSU's problem now. So Manny Diaz is going to be way more involved in the defense than he has been over the last couple of years. So that's really exciting to see. So, you know, the coordinating, the play calling, and things like that shouldn't really be an issue this year. Now, you got D'Eriq King coming back. He had a injury in the bowl game loss against Oklahoma State. He's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Last year, he was in the running for the Heisman Trophy, but after the Clemson loss, he kind of fizzled out. He kind of lost his Heisman momentum, but he still had a really good season last year, threw for 2,686 pass yards, 23 passing touchdowns to only 5 interceptions while completing 64% of his passes. He also had 438 rushing yards on the ground and 4 rushing touchdowns. So D'Eriq King, in my opinion, is the second best quarterback, or even the best quarterback in the ACC. I feel like he's better than Sam Howell, but I can understand it for a good majority if you guys disagree with that, because Sam Howell is supposed to be, you know, like one of the first quarterbacks taken off the board in next year's NFL draft. But in my opinion, not being biased, I feel like D'Eriq King is better, because not only is he good throwing the football, but he's also a really dynamic runner as well. Now, you look at Miami's backfield. I feel like Miami has one of the best backfields, not only in the ACC, but in college football. Like, there's not a lot of teams in college football that have a running back room that stacks up to the talent that Miami has. I think their running back room is on par with Georgia and Alabama's. As a matter of fact, Miami's running back room was so talented that a guy named Lorenzo Lingard, who was one of the best not only running backs in his recruiting class, one of the best recruits in his recruiting class in general, had to transfer to Florida because he wasn't able to get that much playing time, because that's just how loaded Miami was at running back. So you got Cameron Harris, who led Miami in carries and rushing yards and touchdowns last year with 643 on 126 attempts, 10 touchdowns, and average 5.1 yards per attempt. Then you had Don Chaney Jr., who had a really good year, 322 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, 4.7 yards per attempt. Then you had Jalen Knighton, a.k.a. Rooster, who had 52 carries, 209 rushing yards, was averaging 4 yards per attempt, and that was him as a freshman. So think about how good this running back room was last year. Think about how talented they're going to be this year. Like, Miami is going to be really stacked on offense. We didn't even get to a lot of receivers. Like, the biggest weak link, well, one of the biggest weak links for Miami's offense last year was the lack of depth and the lack of talent that they had at receiver. Okay, the best receiver on Miami's roster last year was Mike Harley. He led the team in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. He had 57 receptions, 799 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. He was the most reliable receiver that Miami had, and he came on like in the mid part of the season. Then, okay, after him, you pretty much ain't have nobody. You have Mark Pope and D. Wiggins, which Mark Pope and D. Wiggins, both of those guys had a lot of talent. They flashed a lot of potential last year, but they just didn't really have a lot of consistency. You had a lot of drops. You had a lot of, miscommunications. You had sometimes when they just want to fight for the ball at all. So how do you address the wide receiver position? Well, you get Charleston Rambo transfer out of Oklahoma, and he comes to Miami, and automatically now you have one of the best wide receiver duos in the ACC with Charleston Rambo and Mike Harley. Now, Charleston Rambo is a guy who could quickly end up emerging as one of the best receivers in college football. As a matter of fact, if the 2022 NFL draft was to start today, Charleston Rambo probably would be a 3rd or 4th rounder. Mike Harley probably be a 5th rounder, because Mike Harley in the NFL is probably going to be looked at as a pure slot receiver. So you got Charleston Rambo, you got Mike Harley. Your 2 wide receiver positions are set in stone. You're already improved there. The question is, who's going to step up and become that 3rd and 4th wide receiver? Now you got weapon next. You got Keyshawn Smith, sophomore wide receiver who didn't really see the field all that much last year. A lot of people are excited about him. Then you got Mark Pope, D. Wiggins. You're hoping that those guys can take, the next step up, but ultimately it's going to come down to what happens in fall camp. Now, a guy that I'm still rooting for is my guy, Jeremiah Payton. Jeremiah Payton came from Fletcher High School out of Jacksonville, Florida. For those of you guys who don't know, I've grown up in Jacksonville for pretty much my whole entire life. So I've been rooting for Jeremiah Payton. I saw him play at high school. I'm expecting a lot of big things out of Jeremiah Payton. So I couldn't really find a lot of articles talking about Jeremiah Payton when it came to how his performance was in the spring. So hopefully he has a really good fall camp, and we could see Jeremiah Payton make a really big impact, because I definitely feel like Jeremiah Payton has a lot of potential that we haven't really seen all that much, because he hasn't really had his number called that much over the past couple of years he's been at the program. Now, the biggest question for me isn't wide receiver, it's not running back, it's not quarterback, because D'Eriq King is expected to be full go come fall camp. My question is going to be the offensive line. Now, the offensive line is a big question mark for me, because, you have guys who are up there and experienced and things like that, but I don't really trust it. The offensive line was a lot better last year in 2020 than what it was in 2019. So I do expect this offensive line to continue to develop. I do expect this offensive line to continue to grow. But one guy who I have a lot of confidence in on this offensive line is left tackle Zion Nelson. Zion Nelson is one of the best offensive tackles, not only in the ACC, but in all of college football. He's expected to be a 1st rounder come next year in the 2022 NFL draft. So it's always encouraging to see that, to start off your offensive line, you have a great left tackle. Now, there's still a lot of positions on the offensive line that have to be decided going into fall camp and whatnot, but I do expect this offensive line to be really good. Now, this defense, for the first time ever, I'm saying this, but I believe that this secondary is going to be better than the defensive line. Normally, when you think about Miami, you think about the defensive linemen and the pass rushers that they put in the NFL year after year. This past year, we had Jalen Phillips, who went 18th overall to Miami, and Quincy Roche, who went day 3 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This year, you don't really have any notable names when you look at this roster on the defensive line that jumps out at you. So there's a lot of guys that have to make a name for themselves. But in the secondary, Miami is really talented. Okay, you got cornerback Tyreek Stevenson, transferred from the University of Georgia. This guy's a guy who also has a lot of NFL potential, who could go in the 1st round of next year's NFL draft. You got DJ Ivy, you got Corey Couch, you got Al Blades, which Al Blades, in my opinion, was the best defensive back last year when he was on the field with Miami. Then safe position, okay, you got Bubba Bolden had a pretty solid season last year, but I feel like he just sometimes gets too aggressive. He tries to play the run too much. So if he can get better in coverage than what he was last year, he should end up being one of the better safeties in all of college football. You got freshman James Williams, who I'm really excited about. This guy is pretty much a hybrid safety. He can play multiple positions on defense. He plays safety. You line him up at slot. You can also can get him to play a little bit of linebacker. A lot of my homeboys were upset because they're Florida fans. They're like, oh man, James Williams should have went to Florida. He's making a big mistake, because I think one of James Williams' teammates committed to Florida at that time last year. I don't know if he's still committed there, but a lot of Florida fans were salty. I said, get over it, man. He's coming to the U. So I'm really excited to see how Manny Diaz is going to utilize him. On top of that, you got Amari Carter, you got Gervin Hall, which, Gervin Hall, he's kind of being a little bit of a letdown wearing that number 26, kind of being a little bit of a disrespect to Sean Taylor, because when you wear that number 26, man, if you wear that number 26, man, you got to do something that number 26, man, because that number 26 is legendary, man. So Gervin Hall needs to have a big year this year. Now, like I said, defensive line is my biggest concern. Not a lot of notable names that pop out at you. Normally you have guys normally every year going into the season that you're like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be really good, like Gregory Rousseau, even though he didn't play last year. Jalen Phillips, Quincy Roche. You don't really have that this year. You have a lot of guys who got to make a name for themselves. Same thing with linebacker. Like, linebacker was like the weakness of the defense last year. Like, linebackers last year for Miami couldn't cover for anything. Thank God they moved Zach McCloud from linebacker to defensive end. I'm interested to see how that's going to end up working out. So the linebacker position for Miami, I want to see how improved that's going to be, because last year Miami's linebackers were solid against the run at times, even though that UNC game nobody did anything when it came to stopping the run. But normally Miami's linebackers last year were pretty solid when it came to the run game, but they weren't all that great when it came to pass coverage. I want to see how good this linebacker unit is going to be this year. So like I said, I expect this Miami Hurricanes team to win 10 games this year, and I see no reason why this team should not be in an ACC championship game. Now, I'm not saying they're going to beat Clemson. I'm not saying that, but I do expect this team to be a contender for the ACC championship game, and I feel like they should be able to win the Coastal, because when you look at everything that North Carolina lost last year, like, they lost their best skill position players on offense: Daz Newsome, Dami Brown. You lost Michael Carter there. You lost Javonte Williams. You still got Sam Howell there. You lost Chaz Surratt on your defense. So UNC lost a good amount of talent on the offense side of football last year. So Miami, you still have pretty much your whole entire offense from last year coming back. Your defense still should be pretty good. So I'm expecting Miami to end up being able to win that ACC Coastal Division this year, and I do expect this team to be in the ACC championship game and also be in the New Year's Six Bowl game. So let me know how good you think Miami will be this year. Make sure that you guys like the video for more college football videos and NFL videos, and thanks for watching.